Well, good morning to all of you here today, or good afternoon, I guess, to those of you, depending on your location and time zone. Welcome to today's webinar entitled Barriers to Energy Transition in the Nordics for Small Vessels. I am Anna Margaret, and I will be guiding you through today's webinar on behalf of Icelandic New Energy and the MAREN project funded by Nordic Innovation. So welcome to both our viewers here today and our speakers who have so generously agreed to participate in today's discussion. So today we have 5 presentations, 2 from Iceland, 1 from Denmark, 1 from Sweden, and 1 from Norway. This webinar is part of a series of webinars and events the MAREN project has hosted since its inception in 2021. The project is funded by Nordic Innovation and involves 5 Nordic clusters and 2 major research institutions. All 5 Nordic countries are involved in the project, and our objective is, among other tasks, to develop a common Nordic strategy on maritime energy transition together with our many stakeholders. This webinar is one of the tools that we use to reach the industry, to foster discussion and gather information. So we touch upon different subjects each time, including policy, different types of fuels, infrastructure, and more. And this time we are focusing on the vessels that use the fuel, and more specifically, the smaller ones. Now, why are we focusing on the smaller ones? Well, Iceland and indeed the Nordics have long been seafaring and fishing nations. In fisheries, Iceland and Norway in particular have been in the lead, followed by Denmark, Greenland, Finland, and Sweden. And of course, the entire fleet has become increasingly fuel efficient over the past 2 to 3, 4 decades, mainly due to technological advances and developments within maritime sectors, changing needs of users and consumers and economic landscape. And we've seen a transition to other fuels start just about a decade ago, when we started the first vessels testing methanol, batteries, and more recently hydrogen. But the focus has often been on the larger deep sea or ocean-going vessels, freighters, cargo ships, cruise ships as well. But today we're going to focus on the smaller vessels, and indeed, for this we have 5 exciting presentations, as I mentioned before, giving different viewpoints from around the Nordics. And before I let our first speaker take over the screen, I will go through a few practical issues. So we have allowed time for questions between the speakers, and indeed one of our speakers cannot stay the entire session. So please feel free to address the speakers through the chat function, and we'll take 1 or 2 questions after each presentation. So you can use the Q&A option on your Zoom interface or the chat for questions to the speakers. And so yeah, this is your line of communication. My co-host and I will try to select the most voted for questions, because you can use the upvote function if there's a question that you particularly are interested in hearing the answer to. And at the end of the entire session, I will try to, bring together the topics we've talked about, and there will still be ample time for more questions at the end. So, and for those of you, well, there are probably people who were unable to attend, but for those people, we have decided to record the session. So this will be available on New Energy's website following probably by the end of the week, in addition to the slides as well. So I think I've covered all of the practical issues, and it's time to get started. Our first speaker today here is Thorsteinn Másson. He is General Manager at Blaume Innovation Hub, which is located in the West Fjords of Iceland. He will be speaking on the topic of energy transition in the West Fjords, which is a rural region devoted to fisheries, aquaculture, and increasingly tourism. However, power and clean fuel production is limited, and Blaume has been working hard to kind of understand the situation and what is the best way for this region of Iceland to move forward with its energy transition and contributing to the national goals as well. So I will stop sharing my screen and allow Thorsteinn to go ahead.
So sorry, sorry about that. There's a little technical difficulties. I will try to share the screen. All right, so do you guys see my screen right now?
It looks like it's working. Oh, there we go.
There we go. Okay. Thank you, Anna, for this introduction, and thank you for hosting this event. As you said, we at Blaume are we have been sort of looking into ways how to push this energy transition forward, focusing on maritime applications, and we think that that a Westfjord of Iceland, due to its sort of the economy there is based on fisheries, fish farming, so heavily reliant on fossil fuel, but that is also a great opportunity to kind of start the the energy transition, and we have, in a way, we have started there, and I just want to go like briefly through like what we think is maybe the proper energy source, green energy source for each users, and then maybe just touch on how we think we should like push this forward and even use the Westfjords as a kind of vehicle to move these things. So of course, as we all know that different energy, we're kind of I think it's really good for us to understand that we are trying to phase out or replace one of the greatest fuel like known to man. Like in our case, in Iceland, it's diesel fuel. It's it has pretty much everything except it is contributing to kind of the development of ruining our planet. But other than that, it's pretty amazing. So we're not going to find any one source, any one like fuel source that is going to replace diesel. So we're going to need different different energy sources for different users, and we think it is important to kind of realize that, and also learn like what could be the optimal energy source, because where to, that gives us like a clearer path on where to start, what we could deploy right now, and what we need to develop a little bit more before we implement it. And of course, this energy type depends on range of the boat, the power output, what fishing gear are being used, and how many days there is in the voyage. A lot of you, most of you like already know this, but I just wanna, I know some of you have heard this before, but I think it's really important, and I think it's a great thing to remind ourselves regularly that in Iceland we've done this before. We have went through a very crucial energy transition when we, in 1902, there were some brave people in the West Church who decided to retrofit a rowing boat. So like the one we see on the picture, they decided to put an engine inside a boat like that. And this was a disruptive event for Iceland. This, you could say that this was kind of how we started to build very modern, very profitable, and some say even one of the best fishing industry in the world. You know, in my opinion, this started like when we put the engine in this boat, and because we know that the energy transition can sometimes be hard. There's a lot of uncertainties. It's we who are working in this industry, sometimes we get frustrated and for the slow going. But I think it's healthy to remind ourselves and the people who are working with us that we can just imagine like the uncertainties, the kind of the risk that these people took in 1902. You know, this was new technology. They were putting in an engine that like most of the people hadn't even seen. They've heard of it, but most of them haven't seen it. Like, what about maintenance? What about spare parts? What about the fuel, availability of fuel and spare parts? Who's going to do the maintenance and all that? And sometimes I think if they would have the tools that we have today, Excel sheets, analytical tools, you know, they might have, you know, kind of concluded that it's, instead of, there was so much uncertainty about this engine thing, that it would be better to invest their resources and energy towards lighter ores, more carbohydrates in the foods of the sailors, better clothing and stuff like that. But you know, they didn't. They just put in the engine, they did the work, and I think it was 4 or 5 years later, almost every rowing boat, or like most of them in the region and in Iceland, had an engine. So just like, you know, this is not the first time we go through a phase like this, and I think that we are having an easier time than they did. So just a little bit about what we think is, because I think this is important to just kind of always try to realize what could be the sort of energy of the future for each type of boats. And we at Blom, we just categorized the boats, and this helps us kind of see what can be done and what needs to be, and sort of what stakeholders needs to be engaged. And as you see here, like, we think that the smallest ones, like small fishing boats, small passenger boats, recreational boats, will be, the most of their energy will come from batteries. And one would ask, why do you kind of, what grounds do you have? And most of our grounds comes from Norway, really. We're just gonna, you know, we look at Norway, they are deploying sort of, you know, see the boat on picture, boats that has like 100 to 300 kilowatt hours of batteries. So we think that most of these boats, like when we have phased out fossil fuel, they will be powered by batteries. And then, like, so it's not about technology in our mind, it's about infrastructure. So the challenge would be infrastructure, because if we wake up tomorrow and we have all the small fishing boats running on batteries, like, it's going to be really challenging charging them when they come back after fishing, like late in the afternoon. They all want to charge their 150, 300 kilowatt hours batteries for the next day. So that's going to be something that we need to start to think about. How are we going to do it? And that's going to be the challenge, we think. Not the technology, but how we're going to deliver that energy to the user. Just going up the list, then we have 10 to 50 tons. These are boats, you know, coastal fishing boats, up to 30 tons in Iceland. I think it's a similar system in Norway. So it's based on tonnages or meters. These are usually longliners. Fish farming vessels, the one that service the fish farming industry, catamaran vessels, and passenger boats, which are, I guess, all over the Nordic countries, like the small passenger boats. We think, again, a lot of their energy will come from batteries that will be charged at the harbor. Again, we need to look at like how we're going to deliver that energy. But we think, and this is also based on information from Norway and other countries, that they will be equipped with sort of range extender or an engine that will eventually run on e-fuels or fuel cell that will use green energy. So, but again, most of the energy, or like a lot of the energy, will come from batteries, come from the grid. And just moving along, 50 to 300 tons boats, tugs, fishing vessel. These are like a little bit smaller than the trawlers, but important for the Icelandic fishery system, and service boats for the like the one we see on the picture. These are larger boats than the regular catamarans that are used in the fish farming industry, but we believe, and again based on information mostly from Norway, that they will take their energy from batteries, but a lot of the energy will also come from e-fuel, because these boats, all of these boats need a lot of energy on demand. Like some of them need a lot of energy, like while sailing, pushing, pulling, or hauling gear, or whatever they're doing. So they will probably need a lot of additional. So it's not just going to be batteries, but again, we think that those will still take energy from the grid at the harbor. So again, we just add to that pile of potential users who will come to the grid in the next, I don't know, let's say that we speed up the energy transition, which of course we are hoping for. In the next 10, 15 years, we will have a large batteries user, and electric. So the demand for electricity will grow significantly around the harbors. So, and of course, as we probably all know, that the large ships, trawlers, cargo ships, they will need to run on e-fuel, biofuel. Even though we know that they are equipped with batteries, that is usually just by optimization, and so almost all of their energy will come from other sources like e-fuel or biofuel. And I know that this is politics, but of course we are hoping as a land of green energy that it will be e-fuel mostly, but it could be, for example, in the US they're looking at biofuel. So yeah, just a short overview how we kind of categorize it to see what we can do right now, and this is, again, we're looking at Iceland. This is different in other countries. So what kind of our approach is we should start to implement what is kind of off-the-shelf products, and based on our kind of analysis, we think that, for example, hybrid systems are available right now, and we could deploy fish farming boats. We could deploy batteries in barges and stuff like that right now. It has been done actually in the feed barges, and we think that the boat will start to come, like the hybrid boats will start to come soon in Icelandic waters. So this is something that we can just sort of take off the shelf and implement right now. Almost 100% battery boats as well. Then they're not maybe quite there yet, but we will see in the coming years boats that run 100% on batteries, and that means that they will have no other means to get their energy. So it means that they will, be really, they will be in a need for really strong, stable grid connection, and their kind of chargers will have to be really reliable. It's the same with hybrid system, but of course they can, rely on diesel engines to charge the batteries. As you mentioned, Anna, the methanol, there's a lot of talk in Iceland about methanol, which is, we think it's a great production. There's like talk about production, and also we know that at least one trawler is being retrofitted to use methanol in a dual fuel setup. We think that ammonia, hydrogen in combustion engines will follow suit. And this is based on information from engine makers like Wärtsilä in Finland and their associate here in Iceland. So just to give you a perspective on how we see, this is not a priority list, but this would be more of, we could implement the hybrid and the battery system, but we need to work on infrastructure regulations when it comes to safety around e-fuels, and also, of course, production. Or like we could even ask ourselves, are we going to produce e-fuel even? Are we going to import it? All of these questions need to be answered, while the hybrid and the battery questions has been like answered in a way when it comes to technology. They just need to be implemented. This is, of course, roughly. So implementation, we are really we like to push forward some implementation of known technology, as I've been mentioning a few times. So this is just a list of what we think we could do, push forward a little bit harder or just implement right now. Of course, these are shore connections. Iceland is in a favorable condition where we have access to green electricity at a really favorable price, usually. So pushing forward the shore connections to ships is very crucial. And we have done, I'm just gonna, mention that almost all of the trawlers and all of the kind of small users are connected to the grid when they come to the harbor. What we are kind of talking about is connecting the whale boats for the fish farming industry, connecting the cargo ships, and even connecting some of the cruise ships, which we are seeing being, that has been sort of, people are working on that right now. Our ferries, we talk a lot about our ferries, which we think that could be really, really important project to kind of be sort of the first movers, especially to use e-fuel. There's a really success story about one of the ferries in the south that goes to Westman Island. It's a battery hybrid vessel. It's just a success story. They use they use a lot of electricity while going to the island and back, and we think that we could do similar things maybe with e-fuel when it comes to the ferry in the west and the two ferries that are in the north. There's a small ferry in the north, like short sea trips that could even be just 100% battery. So pushing that forward, we can do that right now. We know the technology. We can just we can call our friends in Denmark, Norway, Finland, basically ask them because this has been done there. I've mentioned feed barges and fish farming vessel. I do that because the technology is ready in Norway, which of course the Norwegian companies have strong tie to the Icelandic fish farming companies. They are implementing in a really impressive rate of hybrid vessels with large batteries. We could do that as well, encourage the fish farming companies to do that, and they will act. We think that the fish farming industry could act as a front runner for the small fishing vessel by building up infrastructure around the harbor for charging their batteries, for just kind of knowing how to, service these battery hybrid systems and things like that. So they could be really important to sort of catapult the fishing industry, especially the small boats. And then last but not least, the MAREN engineer students. We kind of are really, really kind of want to emphasize this, that they will be key players in the energy transition. These kids, they're kids now, they're starting to learn. They will be the ones that will service, implement, do maintenance on these systems, but they will also be the one with the innovative mind who kind of knows, who will push forward new ideas, better technology and all that. So it's vitally important, and not just for Iceland, just for all the countries who wishes for successful energy transition in the maritime realm to educate their students. And I'm not just talking about the engineers. I'm talking about the marine engineers. Like, we think that they should be allowed to. We should buy some equipment in the schools. They should be playing with fuel cells, of course, within safety limits, but just get the feel for the technology and get their interest on this energy transition, and that way we could really speed things up. So yeah, that was all for me, and just again, thank you very much for organizing this, and just thank you for having me.
Thank you, Thorsteinn, kindly for your insights into the maritime sector, particularly in the West Fjords. We do have a question from the audience. It's from Hjörleifur Finnsson at the West Fjords Regional Development Office. And he asks specifically about the fishing trawlers, which are quite large scale. He asks, is it an option to stop this method of fishing since it's so enormously power consuming? Do you want to comment on that, Thorsteinn?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a good question, and it gets brought. We of course we bring it up and we hear it, but I have experience from the fishing industry as well, and I think, like, firstly, I think the fleet owners and the ship owners have been doing very well to reduce the use of fuel. They have implemented better fishing gears, better engines. They have optimized their their fishing method, if you like. Like, for example, they would go for be more, well, not as diverse. Some of them have, like, focused on one species, and so they have done, I would say, very, very well on saving fuel per kilo or per they caught. About switching method, I think that is not, it's definitely not easy, and I think it's going to be for a nation like us who depend heavily on the fishing industry. We should always look for ways to build and use lighter gears, and if we can save fuel, we should do that. But I think, and this is my opinion, I think trawling is really important to the economy, and there are mixed. Of course, we've heard about trawling. Of course, it's a bottom fishing gear, so it runs on the bottom. But I think that we should sort of ease into banning or switching. We should more encourage, and I think the industry will find its way. And so yeah, I think it's not realistic to change gears. It could happen, but we're talking decades, I think.
Mm-hmm. I have a question myself. You mentioned that you had visited Wärtsilä in Finland. I think it was this year. So you have been communicating with stakeholders around the Nordics. Could you comment on any common issues that we face in the Nordic countries and vice versa, and also maybe if there are any specific issues that are solely applicable to Iceland?
Yeah, yes. It was fascinating to visit Wärtsilä. They are, we had the feeling that they were definitely in the forefront of the maritime energy transition. They had poured money, research, and people into implementing engines that could use e-fuels like methanol, ammonia, hydrogen. So it was really fascinating, and of course, as a large fishing nation, it's really important for us to know that these solutions are being developed. Iceland is, Wärtsilä is a known, it's widely used and known brand here in Iceland. But I think when it comes to, for example, e-fuel, we sometimes talk about, like, how is the best way to do it, and, like, in simplest terms, maybe we should just call the Norwegians and call Finland and just kind of ask them. We don't need to be the expert, and we will probably not influence it much as we're just a small island. But you know, I think we should do more of learning what our kind of neighboring countries are doing, especially like in Norway, which have like not the same but similar economy when it comes to, it's fish farming, it's fisheries. They have a large coastline. They are dealing with some of our challenges, and I think, as I mentioned in my presentation, I think bringing electricity to the grid, to the user, will be a challenge for us all. And that will not just be Iceland, it will be Denmark, it will be Norway, it will be Finland, because I think the users, we will see more batteries than maybe we thought, in the future at the harbor.
Thank you for that. So I think I will allow myself to change the agenda just a bit and allow Sigrid Ledre to share her screen. She is next up. She is here today representing SINTEF Industry in Norway, and she is a senior research scientist there at the Department of Sustainable Energy Technology based in Trondheim. And she will be giving us an overview of the Zero Kyst project, which involves, among other things, developing a zero-emission powertrain, and they're also retrofitting 10 different vessels with zero-emission propulsion. So this is a very relevant project and hands-on that we are following closely. So let's see if technology is on our side. Okay, I think you're good to go.
Yeah, great. And thank you for the very nice introduction, Anna Margaret. So my name is Sigrid. I am a senior research scientist in SINTEF. I don't know if you know of us. I haven't planned to say much about SINTEF today, but we are a research institute. We're one of the largest in Europe. And we basically do research within all fields, all technical fields at least. So today I will represent the Zero Kyst project, which we are part of. And the slogan for the project is decarbonizing the fisheries and aquaculture industry. So the concept of this project is it was funded under the umbrella called Green Platform, which was a funding scheme in Norway last year, and it is a way to connect what is happening and what needs to be done right now when it comes to building and implementing hydrogen infrastructure and also drivetrains at the same time as we are looking at the future and what will the future look like. So the way that the project is built, the goal is to strengthen the Norwegian value creation and export, and to enable Norway to implement the green transition and create green growth. So that's the overall agenda. And then we have in this project a plan to look at fuel cell battery, both in hybrids with each other and hybrids with other things, looking at both powertrains, developers we have involved in the project. We have shipbuilders. We also have infrastructure providers on both hydrogen and electrical power side. And then we also have a partner here who is working with the infrastructure for hydrogen, who is also producing hydrogen locally, which is an interesting concept as well. So I'll get a bit more into the details, but it's important to show that we have research institute, universities, and industry, and then we also have close communication with municipalities and government, and which has shown to be quite important. So the main objective of the entire project is to accelerate the decarbonization of the fishery and aquaculture industry through making zero-emission vessel concept and associated infrastructure. And as you may know, and I think it's the same for the other Nordic countries as well, we need both. We need the infrastructure and we need the vessels, and it's ideal to have them both in the same project. So the sub-objectives in the project are to make a hybrid zero-emission powertrain, which should be available for new build and retrofit. Develop and demonstrate zero-emission fishing vessel concept. Develop and demonstrate solutions for local supply of both hydrogen and electricity. And develop and implement energy infrastructure for zero-emission maritime transport in Lofoten. So this whole project is focused on the north of Norway. Lofoten is the main case area, but we also are looking at other places up north in Norway, because that's where the relevant end users are in this project. And then we have a last work package, or a last goal related to more the future, and I will get back to this, but it's to look into technology models and analysis which we can use to reduce emissions by at least 50% by 2030. So going back to the whole concept of the project, these types of projects were started in 2021, and this project, the main objective is to have two types of project in one. So we have one which we call the industry project, which is also the main project. It's run by industry partners. It should lead to value creation for each of the participating companies, and also contribute to socioeconomic profitability. And the main activities there will lead to piloting and implementation of technology. So by the end of the project, we aim to have at least one fishing vessel under operation, and production of hydrogen locally, as well as the energy infrastructure for electrical power. And then we have the competence building project, which is embarked in the same project, but it is a separate project which has the same focus areas. So we're looking into the same areas that the main project, but we're trying to see what is needed to be done for the future. What type of models do we need to develop? What type of technologies do we need to develop for the next 5 to 10 years, or to be used in the next 5 to 10 years? And the other thing which is important, which also separates these type of projects, is that in the competence building projects, all the finds or the things that are found have to be published. So it should be quite open. These are the members of the consortium. So we have the powertrain developers, which is Hematech and Siemens Energy. We have the shipbuilders and shipyards, Salfa and Balstaslip. Salfa is located in Trondheim, but they also have offices up north. Balstaslip is located in Lofoten. And then we have a ship owner, Øra, who will operate the vessel that is built. And then we have energy and infrastructure suppliers. We have Hoto Marine, who are on the hydrogen production side. Then we have Plug, who are developing technologies for charging. And then we have Lofotkraft, who are the local power supply company. And then in addition, we have industry cluster, Renergy, who helped make the project happen. And then we have Sintef and University in Trondheim, who is the research partners. The project is built up by 5 work packages, which are all connected to the main objectives that I showed earlier. So we have the number one, which is zero emission drivetrain, where Siemens is leading this one, developing the drivetrain, which is a battery hydrogen hybrid. Then we have DP2, which is the zero emission vessel, which is being developed in the led by Salfa. Then we have DP3, which is looking into flexible and competitive hydrogen supply, which is led by Hoto Marine. And then we have the last one, which is looking into regional energy infrastructure, led by Lofotkraft. These are the 4 main work packages in the main project. And then we have DP5, which is located, as you can see, as an overreaching project, the competence building project. And that project has another work structure, But as you can see, we have DP1 and VP1 looking at the same thing, hydrogen electric powertrains. We have VP2, where we are looking at fuel islands, bunkering and charging at sea. We have VP3, which is looking at onshore energy infrastructure, which is closely related to DP4. Then we have VP4, which is more overreaching and looking into safety, environment, and sustainability. And then we also have another a bit overreaching work package looking into the zero emission coastline. So what I will focus on today, because that's where SINTEF is involved, is the competence building project. The main project is ongoing, and we're halfway through the project right about now, and all the plans are set in motion. There are drivetrains being built, the vessels are planned for construction, and the hydrogen production sites that will have already been decided, and everything is ready. I think there are some investments decisions still missing, but the project is going according to plan. I want to point out that having a project like this, where you have a competence project built like a research-driven project and then an implementation project, is very interesting for both sides, because we get to work together, and the industry are very closely involved in determining what will be done in the competence building project, which is also interesting to see, to get online input from them as they go along in their process into this research project. So the competence building project is set to build up around the main project. We are looking at general competence building, but also building of models and technology. And the goal is to contribute to at least 50% reduction by 2030. And of course, our overall goal and IMO's now goal to be able to be zero emission by 2050. Yes, I think I'll move on and go through a bit in each of the work packages. So work package 1, the challenge we are looking at there is hydrogen electric and drivetrains should be a realistic alternative to fossil fuels, and for a wide range of vessels. So going back to what was said in the previous presentation, where we are talking about how the different types of drivetrains will be used, there's not one solution that will be used for everyone, but we still wanted to look at different markets for hydrogen. So even though this project focuses on fishing vessels, in the competence building project, we are looking a bit broader as well. And the goal is to develop method and tools, both for design and for operation of hydrogen electric drivetrains. So that means that we are both looking at tools which can help you size the drivetrain, for example, the size of the battery versus the size of the fuel cell stack, but also into how it can be operated, which is very closely related to, or has to be closely related to, the actual operation of the vessel. So how can you use this type of hybrid in the best possible way? And the 3 activities we have here, we are looking at the actual hybridization. So we're looking at the battery and the fuel cell stack. And then we are taking it a bit step out and looking at the whole vessel. How can the system design optimization for minimum lifetime cost for the entire vessel? And then we are also looking into holistic power and energy management strategies and trying to connect that. VP2, fuel islands, bunkering and charging solutions at sea. And this is not necessarily to have, when we started the project, the goal wasn't to have bunkering and charging solutions far out at sea, but to have them where they are needed. Because we see, especially in the beginning, if we're going to start building hydrogen vessels for various markets, we cannot just have one refueling station located at one harbor somewhere, because especially for a lot of the fishing vessels, they travel around. So there needs to be flexible options. And instead of building a lot of them everywhere, we are looking into solutions that you can have at sea that can be moved around. So the challenge is that the coastal fleet has a variable energy need and irregular operation. And the goal is to enable energy efficient, flexible, and demand-oriented offshore bunkering and charging solutions. So we are looking into systems where you can have hydrogen available, and then you can have both charging for the electrical part and then hydrogen for refilling of that. And the activities are very model-based. So they're looking at conceptual design for self-contained bunkering and charging solutions. I see that there are some Norwegians still left here in the translation. Sorry about that. And then we're looking at a dynamic model for hydrogen conditioning and bunkering. So there are already quite a few models for this. However, one of the things that's quite interesting to look into is refueling at the pace that is necessary for the user, instead of we have bunkering solutions for large vessels, we have bunkering solutions for ferries that need very fast refueling, but actually looking at different types of refueling and bunkering systems where you don't necessarily need the most expensive solutions, because we have other options as well, and you don't necessarily need a compressor. You can have what is called cascade filling, where you are using the pressure differences. So we're looking into a lot of these things in these models. And then we're also looking and doing stress testing on components during fast charging, which is also there's not that much research on it. VP3, onshore energy infrastructure. The challenge is that, as we also heard in the previous talk, we need a robust and flexible operation of power systems. And we also, of course, want it to be as much renewable as possible. And this takes a lot of work and a lot of, we see already in this project that it's not necessarily made like this already. And we have had quite a few issues or things to be sorted out when it comes to the power infrastructure in Lofoten for it to be accessible or to be used for charging of vessels. The goal is to develop and validate optimal configurations of integrated offshore infrastructure for hydrogen and electricity supply. And the activities are to have an integrated regional infrastructure, to have optimal configuration and operation of these, not just to have them, but actually that they work the way we need them to work, and a flexible energy system. And then we have a PhD in this project who is working on the latter part. Safety, environment, and sustainability. These are things that we at SINTEF work with quite a lot, and we, in most projects where we are looking a bit ahead, we have to think about these things. So in order to achieve public accept for new technologies, to also societal and environmental risks, in addition to safety factors related to hydrogen-less vessels, they need to be understood. We need to know what type of barriers will be there and how we can overcome them. So we are looking at impact on safety, environment, and sustainability based on different transition scenarios. And the activities are to perform hazard analysis. So we're performing hazard analysis both for the actual cases in the project, but also for other thought cases. And then we're developing a model for risk assessment and develop and also sustainability indicators. And we are also analyzing the assessment and need to formulate recommendations. That is the end goal. And in this work package, we also have a PhD who is working on this. And having PhDs in projects like this is a very important connection between us in the research companies or the universities and the actual industrial partners. And then we have the last work package here, which is looking at infrastructure, value chains, and looking at this as one. So we need to model them together to analyze a realistic market potential. And the goal is to develop and disseminate a national transition scenario roadmap for a hydrogen electric coastal fleet, which includes value generation of the green coast. So taking a couple of steps back and looking at the whole picture. Activities, one of the most important things, and it's not necessarily that simple, is to identify suitable vessels and barriers for large-scale implementation, estimate energy demand and transition scenario evaluation. And then there is also a PhD here working, I think it's actually turned into a postdoc that will look at market potential and development of mathematical models and analysis. So yeah, I have a couple of more slides that I want to show, or a couple of projects that I just want to show as well, which I'm involved in and that I think is interesting for this topic we have here today. And one is called Pilot E U-boat. It's a fancy name, and U-boat in Norwegian is submarine, which is not really what it is, but it is a project where we are building the world's first hydrogen aquaculture service vessel in north of Trøndelag, so a bit north of Trondheim. And this project is already some steps ahead of Zero-kyst. This is a project where they're building a boat for aquaculture. So this is a hydrogen battery hybrid boat, which will operate out to the aquaculture farms, which are not very close to shore. And at the same time, H2 Marine and NTE are building local production with electrolysis, which is also the same concept that the same partner is using in Zero-kyst. And the owner of this vessel will be SalMar, aquaculture company. And I think the status of this boat, the last I heard, I've seen pictures, it's being built. The electrolyzer is in Rørvik already. So this project, the production of hydrogen will begin this year, and the vessel will be ready in operation in the beginning of next year. And then the last project, which Anna Margaret is also part of, and we have Iceland in, which I think is a kind of similar project to MAREN in some ways. It's called Nordic Hubs. It started August 1st, and this is a project where we will again take some steps back and look at Nordic hydrogen hubs and create roadmaps towards 2030 and 2040. So we have a lot of partners from the Nordic countries. We have all the Nordic countries involved, and we will do case studies into different types of hydrogen valleys and hydrogen projects going on in Norway. We will look into socio-economic studies. We will also do quite a bit of analysis on the power system, electrical power system. So this will also be a very interesting project to follow. I think I'll stop there.
Thank you, Sigrid. I have a question for you. We still do have some time. So I wanted to ask, and I don't know if this is related to your direct part of the project, but I'm wondering, are you aware like how the decision was made to focus on the electric and hydrogen based drivetrain? I know that Norwegian government has been very ambitious in its plans for decarbonization on a national and regional level. And the focus has been on strictly zero emission, so which basically includes only batteries and hydrogen for now. So can you talk about that a little bit?
I can talk about it on more general, looking from my perspective, because the company that initiated this project was Selfa, and they already had a plan for the hydrogen battery hybrid here. But what I can say is that we do quite a bit of analysis and work with different customers who are looking into the various fuels. And the segment of fisheries and aquaculture are in that size segment where hydrogen makes sense if we're going zero emission. So we also have options going for pure battery. You can go for, we also have biofuels in all of this, but if we think that we cannot only use biofuels for everything, We have batteries, we have hydrogen, but then you also, for larger vessels, will probably have more ammonia, methanol even. And the advantage of these segments that we are looking at now is that they are ideal for the both the distances and the sizes of the vessels that are ideal for hydrogen battery. So if we look at, for example, the boat in Seychelles, or the vessel, it's definitely gonna have, it's not gonna have the same freedom if it only goes battery. So the owner of the vessel, Öra, it's a one-man company almost, and he already has a battery diesel hybrid, which is operating well. But as he says, he cannot have just the battery. That's going to be too unpredictable. And for fishermen or fishing vessels, the most critical, or that they cannot have this, we call it in Norway, we say running out of electricity fare. So they need to have something. And as you may know, when you have a battery, you already have an electrical motor or a drivetrain. So adding a diesel engine to it doesn't necessarily make sense. But if you add hydrogen and a fuel cell, you are just adding a range extender to the battery. So that's, I think, why it makes sense.
Yeah. I would like to add actually some context here in Iceland. The fact is that the stakeholders involved in doing the fishing themselves, they have been raising the issue of there's really the need for redesigning the entire framework around coastal fishing here, as the window for fishing in each 24 hours just simply doesn't allow for, and doesn't, in particular, does not incentivize single fishermen to look into energy transition, because they need to make a livelihood and they have just a specific window to accomplish this in each day. So there are some systemic changes to the entire fisheries framework that need to be looked into and implemented if we are to go forward. Just a comment on recent discussions here.
But it's the same in Norway. I mean, we have a lot of discussions around this, and we also have seen in this project that things are not already things are not made from a regulatory side either to go over to these other fuels, and that's why we need to have these larger projects who can push for that. Yeah. Because we see that we have clusters as well who do a good job. But my personal opinion, and this is just me because I work with these smaller vessels, is that the shipping industry will survive. They will find their fuel and do what they need to do, regardless of what the rest of us do. But for fisheries, and in particular for fishing vessels, they're often one person owning one vessel. They don't have the money or the speed to do a fast transition. They need to have predictability, and that's why we need these regulations to change now, and we need more pilots so that we can go through all these in Norwegian we say child diseases, so that we can get to the next, get past the piloting stage. So that's why it's quite, and I think as Norwegians and probably Icelandics as well, fishing is so close to our culture. So this is something we should treasure. And then we have the aquaculture industry, which is, there's more money there, but they are also in the same needs as for the fishing vessels. Absolutely.
Thank you, Sigrid. I think this will actually directly feed into our next speaker. He is Ola Lundberg Larsen, representing the Danish Fishers Association. He's the Deputy Director of Fisheries and Sustainability. And I think what we were just discussing with Sigrid directly feeds into his Danish perspective on green energy transition and decarbonization efforts in Denmark. So let's see if you're able to share your screen. And welcome, Ole.
Thank you. Just a moment. I just need to find the right screen to share. Yes. Should be there. Okay. Do you have the screen now? Can you see?
I can see all of the slides, so you need to press present at the bottom right.
Okay. I started, actually, I think I did. Then just a moment.
Just as a side comment and interesting fact, while Ole is planning his presentation.
But the presentation is still not the right one.
You're probably, if you have two.
I had two screens on, and I
can see. That's probably the problem.
Okay, I can try.
Would you like me to share it for you?
Just a moment. To delete the other screen and see if that helps.
Yeah, I have the same problem.
Okay, what now?
Same.
The same?
Yeah.
It's just updating. Just a moment. Let me see. Okay.
There we go.
Here we go.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, but my screen is informing me that I have low system resources. So if I have a poor audio quality, then just say, then I must see what I can do about it.
I'll let you know.
But anyway, thank you for inviting me to this webinar discussing barriers to energy transition in the Nordic, and especially looking at the small vessels. There's no doubt that energy transition is a main issue for all of us, and it's a main issue in fishery. In Denmark, we will see into a levy in 2 years, which also makes us even more interested to go in the direction of using less energy, or at the end of the day, go to zero emission possibilities. As Anna said, my name is Ole Lundberg Larsen. I'm an Executive Director, Fisheries Policy and Sustainability in the Danish Fishermen's Organization. We are organizing the main part of the Danish fishermen. There are two other organizations, one for the pelagic sector with very few but very large vessels, and one for the coastal sectors with only static gears, and they have very few members. So we have the main parts of the Danish fishermen in the organization. So just to set the scene, I would like, I don't really think this is, yes, I just want to say that if we look at 1990, which is the starting point of looking how is it going with the emissions, we can actually say that emissions in the Danish fishery is reduced with more than 60%, and that was in 2020. And we have the main reason is not that good, because that's reduction in activity in the catches. Then there has been quite an important structural change, larger and more energy effective vessels. My best guess is that it has been the same development in the other Nordic countries. An important thing, which is what I would call a real reduction in the emissions, is that reductions in the emissions with 40% per kilo of fish we catch. So this is just where we have been going in the last 30 years. Can we reduce another 40% in the next 30 years? That might actually be a very realistic goal, but there's work to do. Just to see a little bit, how do our fleet look? We have, with the blue, can you see my pointer?
Yes.
Good. With the blue, you can see the number of vessels. As you can see, the number has been heavily reduced since 1996, where we have the figures from. We can also see, if we look at the gross tonnage with the green, it's not that easy to see, but if you look at, there has also been a heavy reduction, and not surprisingly, we have had a heavy reduction in the engine power also. So reduction has happened, but if you look at the figures, you can also see that the main reductions actually was before 2010 and somewhat like that. So it's probably mainly because of changes in fishery and some rather heavy buyout schemes at that time. And then just to take a closer look on the small vessels. If we look at our small vessels and see the fuel consumption, Danish vessels, and look, if you say small vessels is vessels with less than 15 meters, you can see that they use approximately 6% of the fuel in Denmark. That also means that if you really want to do important reductions, it might be more interested for many parts to look at the larger vessels, because if you really can do something on the larger vessels, you will reach more heavy reductions in the fuel in the use of fuel consumption for all the fleet in Denmark. That could be a reason why the main interest is going to the larger vessels, just as an example. What have we been looking at in Denmark for fuel saving initiatives? If we look, there's a lot of possibilities. Now I just taken all the possibilities we have been discussing. Some of the things people are using and are investing in. If we look at retrofit programs, if we look at improved ship design, if we look at optimized refrigeration technology. So there's a lot of changes, but it's changes which are reducing the fuel consumption. It's not changes that in a short time will go in the direction of zero emission. But I think we will reduce emission in the years to come. We have also had a project, how this was an example with vessels at 17 and 24 meters fuel saving. Actually, it was possible to give advice on savings from 45% to 61%. There's a project report with ideas, possibilities, existing technologies, energy optimization, operation, propulsion working environment. All the things you actually can do in changes today, you don't need a new vessel, or you don't need a new power thing or anything. This is possibilities that actually exists, and where you start to get some grants. I'll just return to that. This is also just to say power solutions are existing. You can go on methods. No, it's not you don't actually need a project or anything. You can just buy a new power solution. They have a hybrid. This is just pictures and things I have copied from someone called Nordhavn Power Solutions. They just distributed, and if you ask them, they will tell you how to install it, and they can help you all the way around. So just to say, there's a lot of possibilities of reducing the fuel consumptions. There's even a few solutions if you want to go to zero emission. That's more difficult because for many fishing vessels, it will be very, very difficult to totally not to use fuel, because when you're trawling, the battery solution will be very heavy, let me say that, and you will also have problems of having enough power when you go to hydrogen and other kinds of fuel. But anyway, if we look at the barriers as we see it, mainly for the small vessel, but a lot of some of these barriers will also exist for larger vessels. Lack of access to financing. It is difficult in Denmark, at least, to get finances for larger investments. This is also because of the general development in fishery. We just had the Brexit discussions, some Brexit compensations. We have high prices. Fuel prices have been rising. Some people say, and then you, of course, can make reductions in the fuel, but you need an investment. That means you will also often have very high initial costs. So a lot of things about money. The next thing about money, return of your investment. When can you expect that your investment have returned, so you can say that you actually are in a better place? Then, as also you said before in the presentation, knowledge. I think we have a lack of knowledge among fishermen, but we also have a lack of knowledge among the people who serve the fishermen, make the service. Can they really tell the fishermen how to make the installments and what the cost will be in the long term, and not at least how much fuel will you reduce your fuel costs in the future? I think that's important for taking such a decision. And the last thing I could also mention is lack of consumer demand. I know when you read the paper, very many journalists write about the consumers, and we need to have a better climate and very much, but we haven't really seen it in the demand for the products. So I think as long as there's no real demand on the products, it will be difficult really to some extent to argue for such great investments. Not at least in a sector with small vessels who can see that their fuel consumption is compared to other products rather low. Is rather low. But if we have, and if we shall go this way, I think solutions is helping the fishermen with financial options, maybe reduce kinds of loans, better possibilities to loan. If the economics in general in the sector will be better, that will be good. That's very difficult just to take as a solution. And then, at least but not at last, the grants and the subsidy programs. We have in the European Union, the European Maritime Fisheries and Aquaculture Fund, EMFAF, where they can grant such as investments. In Denmark, we have actually had a program now called Green Transition, where there has been possibilities of getting grants for investments in reducing fuel, different kinds of ways of doing it, investments in existing vessels, actually. I also think that projects, as we heard before, projects where the service industry and the fishermen are getting wiser on how to invest and what products to invest in. I think such products will be important. I expect, actually, we have a project in Denmark where we have 1 or 2 vessels trying with methanol and what are the effects, also the economics in such a project. I think the important conclusion on the barriers is that it's not an option to say no and not to do anything. But I think it's rather difficult, and I don't expect that the main fleet will be changed within 1, 2, 3, or 5 years. It's a long path to go. I think that shall be the end of this presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ola. Thank you for an insightful presentation, and it's in a way it's comforting to see that all of us around the Nordics are faced with this same common challenges and looking at similar solutions to overcome the barriers for energy transition. I noticed in your second to last slide you mentioned the lack of consumer demand. Could you elaborate on this? And do you mean that so the consumer of the fish, are you referring to the fact that the consumer isn't particularly interested or willing to pay more for MSC certified product? Or can you elaborate on that?
Yes, I can elaborate on that. First of all, this is just, looking from our point of view, we haven't met very many who said that we want any reduced climate from the fish. This is not the main issue from the fish on sustainability for in these years is if you are trawling or not trawling, and discussions on how are the stocks and that kind of stuff. We haven't, in Denmark at least, had very many discussions on reduced emissions on fish, and it's maybe actually of a good reason, because if you look at emissions from fish and compare it to other feeds like agriculture products and that kind of stuff, actually the emissions are lower. Mm-hmm. So in that sense, we are, for a start, a rather positive place. But as I also said in the last sentence, this won't allow us just to wait and see all the others move and reduce their emissions. We also have to reduce emissions. But for the time being, I think it will be very difficult to really get any economics in that sense and any consumer demand. We haven't seen it, at least. So that's the main thing. The other thing, do we have, is it a good investment using MSC and that kind of things? That's more complicated. But there shall be no doubt that in Denmark we try to MSC certify our main stocks if possible, and we think it's important on the long term to have a certification that our products are sustainable. It can be a long discussion on marks and MSC and that kind of stuff. I don't think that's the important discussion today, but it was just to mention we haven't really a pressure from our surroundings that we shall reduce the fuel consumption in fishery for now. But this is not to say that we haven't this pressure in 2 or 3 or 5 years. I can't tell. I think probably we will have the pressure, actually.
Absolutely. And your last comments actually remind me of a saying we have in Iceland that goes "Ekki gera ekki neitt," which really means don't do nothing. And I think it's clear here today that we're certainly not doing nothing. We are doing something. And a discussion, for example, like we're having here today is extremely important. And, you know, comparing to our activities to what our neighbors are doing and learning from one another. So we're not reinventing the wheel in each and every region and country is extremely important. So thank you, Ole, for your contribution to today's webinar.
But just a final remark, also to say if anyone are sitting and have any question, they will of course be welcome, but I will have to leave the webinar within 10 minutes or something. So if you have any question, I would actually ask you to come around and ask now, because I will have to leave for another meeting, unfortunately.
Yes.
I promised to participate before the summer holiday, and after the summer holiday, my calendar has exploded. So sorry about that.
That's no problem. And I can also mention that anyone is free to get in touch with me, and I can link you up with Ole following this webinar. And it's easy to find anyone really online anyway. But I can get you in contact with Ole following today if you have any questions that come up later, or when you rewatch the recording, for example.
Okay.
Thank you, Ole.
Thank you.
We'll probably have questions come up later, and I will forward them to you.
That's fine. Thank you.
Thank you. So on to our next speaker. So we move over from Denmark to Sweden. We have Eleanor Thorström, who's a project manager at RISE Research Institutes of Sweden. So she will be giving us a Swedish perspective based on projects that she is involved with at RISE. So it'll be interesting to hear whether there are some similar common or entirely different issues in Sweden, but I think they'll rather be common.
Yes, thank you so much. Thank you for having me here. I just want to put up a warning that if I sound a bit blurry or appear quite weird, I'm high on fever right now. I have got this terrible flu, so I've got some pills in me as well, but hopefully I will manage. So, but I'm I'm sorry for this.
Thank you for joining us, though.
Trying to share my screen at least. Yes. Do you all see it now?
I can see the screen, but you probably need to.
Is it in presentation mode now?
Yeah, now it is.
Yeah, perfect. As Anna-Margret said, I will talk a bit about energy transition from a Swedish perspective, and I will try to focus on smaller vessels due to the subject of today's webinar. A short agenda for my presentation. I will start with speaking a bit about who we are at RISE. I'm not sure if all of you know us, so a couple of words about that. Then I just want to set the scene for you when it comes to the emissions from shipping in Sweden, and give you some figures about that, and also how our national emission targets links to that, and a bit about upcoming political instruments, because this is actually one of our main barriers, I would say. And I would end with a couple of words about one of our ongoing research projects. Yes. And don't hesitate to write any questions or anything like that during the presentations. Yeah. But first of all, who are we at RISE? RISE is the biggest research institute in Sweden. We are approximately 3,000 employees. I work at a department called the Maritime Department, but actually, much like SINTEF, we have research in all possible and thinkable areas. I work on a unit called Maritime Transport and Logistics Systems, and we conduct research that are linked to both energy systems in the port, but also on board ships, and a lot of alternative fuels. What you should know about RISE is, besides all the research, we have over 130 test beds and demonstration environments. So we are more often than not helping the industry to try their components and technologies to see them, take the innovation one step further. So that is more or less our purpose at RISE. Yes, but just a couple of quick words about the emissions from shipping in Sweden. When it comes to the domestic shipping, it adds up for 4% of the emissions from the total national transport industry. So actually, it's not the biggest share when it comes to the total emissions from transport. But when we are talking about domestic shipping, it's worth pointing out that that is all just including shipping between Swedish port and not the international shippings that are visiting our ports. And it includes leisure boats and commercial traffic, but it doesn't exclude, excludes some of the bigger fisher boats and also the military fleet. But what is very interesting is that approximately 25% of all the emissions from this share comes from leisure boats, and 50% of the emissions from commercial shippings is actually from the publicly or procured own traffic. So both are like our pilot boats or communal vessels and road ferries and so on. So that is, they are actually responsible for 50% of the emissions. And what also is very interesting is the transport work from both the domestic and the foreign shipping in Sweden is increasing, and right now they're increasing quite fast, with an annual increase of 2% per year. But what I really want you to take with you from this picture is that most of our emissions from the domestic shippings actually stems from smaller vessels. In what way? So when it comes to the national emission targets in Sweden, in 2017, we adopted a climate policy framework which consists of a climate act, climate targets, and a climate policy council, more or less. And this climate act states that every 4 years, they should be renewed with new targets and new actions that all aligns in the to our climate targets. So the next period is starting right now and will go on for 2026. And all the actions that is in that climate act that are heading for or targeting shipping should align with their target of reducing our greenhouse gases from inland shipping by 70% compared to 2010. And by the year of 2045, we should have no net emissions from greenhouse gases from the domestic shipping. So we have quite ambitious goals for this group of vessels, the smaller vessels, seen to that they are responsible for a big share of the greenhouse gases. But this is one big barrier in Sweden, because a lot of the political instruments that are in place today are not targeting this group of vessels. So that is the problem. So the Swedish Traffic Agency has developed compendium of suggestions on new political instruments that should be or could be taken into place in this new 4-year period for the Climate Act. And these upcoming political instruments that they are discussing right now, no one is in place, I should say, but they are, like I said, discussions going on. And if we can divide them into 3 different groups. And if we look at the first group here, when it comes to the economically promote shipping with lower emissions, that is still targeting quite a lot the bigger fleet and the bigger vessels. But when it comes to setting requirements for ships and greenhouse gas emissions, then we are actually looking at suggestions that are targeting this smaller group of or this group of smaller vessels more precisely. And that would be that we actually set hard requirements for the authorities' fleets and the governmentally owned fleets, and also few requirements for all smaller vessels. So that could be one way to go to really increase the incentive that you should, in one way or another, have a more greener operation. And also when it comes to the third group here, when it comes that is focusing on increasing knowledge and measures to reduce emissions, then we are looking at several different options, but that are very much inspired by the Norwegian model with a transition program or a consulting support that could be helpful for small ship owners that wants to convert their vessels, but they don't know how, or they want support in any way, or a knowledge support that could give them the muscles to actually go on with a project. Yes, so I would say that this is actually one big barrier in Sweden, because as previous speakers already have said, the technology is there for a lot of the alternative drivetrains. We have batteries, we know methanol, hydrogen is coming up as well. We know how to produce e-fuels, but we really need the industry is, at least according to me, the industry is further ahead than the politics. At least that's the case in Sweden. Yes, and I will also mention an ongoing research project that we have going on right now. It ends this winter, but it's called Future Energy Infrastructure Around the Swedish Coastline. I know it's quite a long project name, but this project is focusing on developing an interactive online mapping tool that should showcase both existing infrastructure but upcoming infrastructure for electrical shipping and hydrogen powered shipping. So it will be both charging stations for battery vessels, and also shore power stations and hydrogen refueling stations, more or less. So this is more of a planning tool, you could say, that both showcase the status right now, but also the status in the future. This will also allow the user to see a scenario analysis based on real-time AIS data that is logging into this tool all the time to see where the most energy demand is around our coastline. And also this tool will be a support for a ship owner that are maybe a bit hesitant to think of an alternative drivetrain, but are curious to see just the numbers. What would it mean for us to convert to batteries or hydrogen? Then we can, by just doing some quick calculations in this tool, show them an estimate at least for what that would mean for them. And before I end this presentation, I want to show you the tool so you can have a look for yourself, because the structure of it is ready and it's online and available for all to use. What's left to be done during the autumn is to fill it with information about the already existing infrastructure and upcoming plans, but all the other functions are working. So let's see if I can change which view I share with you. Let's see here. Do you see the tool now?
I see the slide. Oh, no, I see it. Yep.
Perfect. So it's much like Google Maps actually to its design. Here you have it's both in English and in Swedish, but I took it in English now for today and for today's presentation. And here you see the three functions: the infrastructure map, the scenario analysis, and the calculate powertrain function. If we have a look at the infrastructure map right now, you see it's just two dots there, and those are just fake, just to showcase how it will look like later on. So this is the biggest remaining part of the project that we will fill it with information. And this will not be just information from the bigger ports. It will be like all the way where we have smaller vessels coming in as well. So we really hope that this will be as a knowledge bank that will live on after this project as well, because anyone can fill in information about the infrastructure here. So we will get a clear picture of both the demand in the future, but also the status right now. And as I said, we have also this scenario analysis function that is a heat map, more or less, based on AIS data. So here you can see the traffic flow, and also it's based on calculations on the ship types coming in and an estimate of the energy demand. So you will see the biggest energy routes, if you want to, in Sweden right now. And then the function that might be the most interesting for this webinar is calculate the powertrain. And here you can, like I said, get an estimate of what a battery or hydrogen powertrain would mean for you as a ship owner. And if you don't already know your existing energy demand, you can calculate it here. And now I'll just type in some numbers so we'll see how it works. But let's say that we have a vessel length of 10 meters, beam of 2.5, design speed of 25 knots, draft, say 1 meter. It's not a double ender. We have a high-speed diesel. It's after 0 to 2,000, 300 kilowatts, and we say that it goes on marine diesel. Then you can just enter your route that you want to go, either in a list or add on a map. And let's say add on a map. And here you can also fill in your speed and draft along the route. And then here you get and I would really stress that this is just an estimate, just to get you some number. Of course, this will be quite varying between different vessels, but it gives you at least something to discuss and a sense of what it would mean to go to this drivetrain. But if we first look at the fuel cell system, you get a summary of the system in total, which electrical motors that you need to have, the fuel cell system itself, and the hydrogen storage, and how much hydrogen you would need for going for this trip. And likewise, you get the information for the battery systems. You get a summary of the battery system at large, the electrical motors, and the battery systems that you need. So this is nothing to like build a boat after, but as I said, a first estimate. Yes, so that is more or less how this tool will be working, and the idea is that it will help both authorities to get a clear picture of the status and the upcoming infrastructure, and help the ship owner that wants to go for an energy transition, and also help research with the scenario analysis function. So it was it launched this summer, so I'm very glad to be able to show you the actual web page right now. It's the first time I present it. Sorry for being sick at that time, but yeah, hopefully it will be filled with information by the end of this autumn, and it will be like going on after the project end. And our hope is that this will also be spreading, so we can use it in all the Nordic countries. So that is a second project that we want to apply for, to spread this information. Yes.
Thank you, Eleanor. So will this be available to anyone in due time?
Yeah. So it is actually already available. So just go to the homepage and you can fill in information if you know anything that should suit the map. But yeah,
Very interesting.
Yeah, that's all for me. That was what I had.
Thank you kindly for your presentation, Eleanor. Thank you for joining us even though you're sick. So sorry.
No worries.
Here is a question that goes, are there any countries that have particularly good approach to tooling and technology for transition that you are learning from their approach? So are you using tooling, or are you learning from someone else, or mirroring someone else's work when creating this tool?
In this tool, actually, we had a look at also a Norwegian tool that was covering just hydrogen infrastructure. But that tool just had information about the infrastructure and not the scenario analysis or the calculate powertrain function. So that was an inspiration for us in this project.
That's really interesting. Thank you for sharing that with us, Eleanor. I'm going to let you go, and also in the interest of time, let our next and last but not least speaker join us. Let's see, we have Runar Untarsson. He is a professor at the University of Iceland. He's at the Faculty of Mechanical, Industrial and Industrial Engineering and Computer Science. And he will be talking to us about another Icelandic case, specifically about improvement of efficiency for an existing vessel. And this project was actually done in cooperation with a whale watching company based in Húsavík in northeast of Iceland called North Sailing. And so he will give us some insight into his research on this topic.
Yes, thank you. I'm going to share the screen. Wait. This one probably. You see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, yes, so thank you. Yes, so my name is Rúnar Unnarsson, I'm professor at the University of Iceland. This is my first presentation of our work. I will actually present this later this year on a conference. So what we did, we studied the retrofitting of a propeller. So I'm going to just jump right in if my computer behaves. So in the general perspective, we know that the shipping is a big industry, and in fact, it's about 80% of all goods are transported by ships. And if shipping would be one country, we can see that it would be the 6th largest CO2 emitter in the world, which is actually very interesting. So because of this, then the IMO, the International Maritime Organization, of course, is looking at what we can do to reduce the CO2 emissions. And they're looking, of course, at the sustainability goals, development goals. And one of them, of course, is the number 13, which is a climate action. And well, they seem to be confused like everyone else, so they change the targets regularly. I think we all are, more or less, always changing. So we want more reduction. But that's we know that from other partners as well. So what they have strategies. They have strategy for new ships. They have strategy for all ships, and then existing ships, which is the EXI, and then they have a carbon index, intensity index, which is also for all ships. And what I've marked here with boxes is the propeller optimization and alternative fuels, which is those two are, I would say, probably are receiving the most attention, at least the alternative fuels. But in our work, we were looking at the propeller optimization. But there are like several different energy efficiency technologies that we can choose from. And if you look on the left side, you can see and we see that it's very promising to use biofuels. So that's the red box there, and the outliers, and you can see we can get up to easily 80% or more CO2 emissions reductions, which is understandably one of the reasons why people are looking at biofuels. So on the right side, we can see how mature the business is, and we have to expect many years into the future because it's not fully developed, and so it's not readily available for the whole fishing industry or the shipping industry as a whole. But if we look at again on the left side, we can see there is less gain, for example, on the green boxes, but those are like hardware-based, mechanical-based options, and for that reason, because they're so low, but you can see they can get up to 40% reduction. It's one of the reasons why people are not so much focusing on them, but still it's worth looking at them, and that's what we did in our project. And so to be specific, we were looking at the propulsion partly hull, but not so much. I'll show you. So our victim, I could say so, is a ship called Hildur, owned by the North Sailing. It's a whale watching company. It's called North Sailing in Húsavík. Initially, this boat was built as an oak fishing boat in 1974, but then in 2009 it was converted to a two-mast schooner, and now it's used for whale watching. It can occupy about 50 persons. So the idea here with this boat was to take the old propeller, which you can see on the floor in the middle of the middle figure, they removed that and placed it with 4 blades, which you can see on the left side. But this is a new design. It's pretty much the same design as they're putting on the big ships here in Iceland, really big fishing ships. And so the person standing with me in the middle of, in the mid figure, he is actually a marine engineer on a very big ship owned by Samherji. And this was pretty much his idea, why not to try this? So they got a propeller from Denmark, from Hundested propellers, and changed also the reduction gear, but they could not fit the propeller easily. So everything had to be modified, and that's the right figure. So they had to like increase the space around the propeller and shift things around. But as you can see, all of this is just pretty straightforward mechanical work. There is no need for infrastructure or anything. We can just take it up to a shipyard or docks and modify the ships. And then what we did, or actually before testing, we measured the fuel consumption of the boat at different speeds, and then we did it also. We did it before and after. So the left figure, you can see the difference. So that's the liters per hour versus speed. So it's a consistent change throughout either the speed or the liters. So we get more speed from the same consumption or less consumption at the same speed. Depends how you look at the figure. Then on the right side, we see the advanced ratio, and we can see that the red curve, that's the efficiency of the old propeller versus the new design. So we can see that we can take very old propellers and replace them with new designs and get a relatively good improvement. Having this data, we started to study and see could we have predicted this. So normally we get curves like this for a propeller that shows the thrust and torque coefficients with the advanced ratio. We did some fluid dynamics modeling, set this up in a software and calculated using the data that we had. And of course, a lot of people know the fluid dynamics. It's a lot of nice figures, colorful figures, but we can get more information than this. So we compared the chart that we got from Hundested propeller, which is theoretically or open flow measurement. It's based only on the propeller, and you can see there's an orange, very around 0.8 J. We have an orange curve there on. Let's just basically plot it on top of the existing dashed curve, and this is what we got from our calculations. And this is theoretical, but then you see the black one below, and that is actual. What we actually got from the measurements, but now it's also taking into account the whole of the ship. So this is realistic, this is real data versus only from the propeller. And then on the left side, we can see the efficiency. So we're jumping in efficiency. The old propeller is on the left corner, and we can see the new propeller on the right top. So there's a big difference for those two propellers in many ways, which was expected. But to summarize our CFD modeling, we predicted 40% fuel savings. But in real test, we saw that the fuel savings are only they are 30%, and they're consistent throughout all the speeds. And so this, for Hildur, this means that the fuel consumption per year is considerable, so going from 23,000 liters to 16,000 liters. And then we can convert that to greenhouse gas emissions reduced down to 50,000 kilo, like CO2 equivalent from 72,000. And the main point for this is like, okay, we don't always have to like focus on alternative fuel. We can do this right now, and this is considered as 30% reduction. And also a very good point is that the retrofitting that like this will also benefit any fuel options. Even though we have electric boats or a biofuel later in the future, it will mean that they will use their energy much more efficiently. Yeah, so this is me pretty fast. Any questions?
Thank you, Runar. I think it's an important point that you raised, that this research you've done actually benefits other fuel options, and it also harmonizes with what our other speakers have talked about. They've called for more funding for this type of research that, you know, increases fuel efficiency, because we need to do this type of research, and we also need to do the hands-on practical projects involving alternative fuels. So what's your next project in this line?
There are two in the pipeline. The same company wants to, they have a similar boat with even worse propeller, so they want to change that. So we probably get much higher savings. That would be nice. Mm-hmm. But they're also talking to companies that are interested in, well, testing their like electric propulsion system in those boats. So that would be also very interesting.
Interesting.
So this company, the North Sail, the whale watching, they're actually very open and have been doing all kinds of projects, putting electric system into this boats, but they also run into a lot of problems, like everyone who starts doing this early on.
And that's the important thing, is that, you know, as I said before, ekki gera ekki neitt, that we, you know, do move forward with these projects and this research and share it with everyone.
Yeah, maybe one point here is that this is very expensive, so the payback time is ridiculous. But if we do this again and again, we can do this faster and more cheaper. But this is one-off, so that, and it was more expensive than if you do it a few times more.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you, Runar. We've run out of time. I just want to make a few comments before we close here today. There was a comment in the Q&A feature on a conference that's happening in the Harpa Concert Hall next week on the energy transition in the Nordic seafood industry. So you can check out harpa.is to find the agenda and register for that. And I'm just going to draw this to a close here today. We've gone through some really five interesting, really relevant talks here today. And we've heard about different viewpoints on various fuels for vessels in the Nordics, ways to increase fuel efficiency as well. And obviously the challenges include strengthening the electric grid, infrastructure, safety and environment. Public acceptance is also a key issue relevant to this discussion. In the involvement of local or regional energy companies, and no less local municipalities, is extremely important when we look to involving every level of stakeholders, as was evident in the case from Norway. And we're seeing various initiatives and proactive thinking, I think, increasing on a national level, hopefully. And we are certainly aware of interest and leadership on the regional level. So I want to thank our speakers here today, Sigrid, Ole, Eleanor, Runar, and Thorsteinn, for your time, efforts, and participation. And to the attendees, I hope the presentations have been enlightening, inspiring, and interesting for you. They have certainly been so for me. So thank you for participating in this webinar here today on behalf of Icelandic New Energy and the MAREN project. I will probably post the slides on our website in a few days, and we will also make the recording available in due time. So thank you all for attending today, and take care. Bye.